Years ago, I used to run all the time. So I got up and I went for a run. And after the run, it was it was really taxing. The more I did it, the harder it got. It got to the point where if I woke up and walk across the hall, literally across the hall to take a shower, I would be exhausted. And after a couple of weeks of existing like this and just sleeping all the time and not knowing what was actually going on, I went to the doctor and found out that I had fibroids. And at the time, I was not married with no children. And the recommendations were to get a myomectomy, to get on a treatment that whose side effect was basically degrading the bones and causing osteoporosis. No, thank you. Or to get on birth control. And my doctor did not give the option of a hysterectomy because I was unmarried with no children. And I thought like that was the best option. So I got on birth control and we monitored them. So every year that I went in for my annual, he would do an ultrasound or order an ultrasound. And I was under the impression, and I guess so was he, that they were getting smaller. So after years of this and just living with it and taking the birth control, taking iron pills in order to sustain some level of energy, I had to switch doctors. And as I'm sitting across from the new gynecologist, she says, you need to have a hysterectomy. And I said, why? They shouldn't be that bad. Well, at this point, they were 75% of my uterus and really draining me, though I'd gotten used to being tired. And my thought was, how did I go from having two, because that's what the previous doctor said, you have two, to 75%. And I later found out that an ultrasound does not give a clear picture of what's actually happening. So as they were growing, it wasn't showing up. And when I actually went to get an MRI, that is when I discovered that I actually had 30. And that is a huge difference. So why do I say, listen to this before you get a hysterectomy? It's simple. I no longer have fibroids, but I did not have a hysterectomy. When I was sitting across from that doctor, I knew that I didn't want that to be my option because I still don't have biological children and I didn't want to do something that was so permanent. I happened to be participating in a conference and one of the speakers at the conference is a doctor in Atlanta at the Atlanta Fibroid Center. And he performs uterine fibroid embolizations, where he essentially goes in and cuts off the blood supply to the fibroids, preventing them from growing, and essentially they die. So after hearing this presentation, I have another appointment with my gynecologist, and she again mentions the hysterectomy, and I say, what about UFE, which had been around, not that I knew, for over 25 years and had never been recommended to me. And she said, oh, I don't do that. And that was the most insulting thing I'd ever heard. Didn't ask you what you did. I asked what was available. But I wasn't told that treatment option because she didn't do it. And actually nobody in my area did. I had to travel to another state. So I say to you, if somebody has told you that you have fibroids, I am not a doctor, first of all. Secondly, if you've been told this, look at what your options are. See if your insurance covers it. Even if it doesn't, some of us have probably taken trips that cost this amount. Check with the Fibroid Center, the Atlanta Fibroid Center, and see whether or not you would be a viable candidate for the procedure. The recovery time was 2 weeks. It's non-surgical. And I could tell the difference within a couple of days. I'm sharing this with you because I didn't know. There were decades. I dealt with this for a decade and no children, no biological children, I should say. And that didn't have to be the case. So if reaching out to them helps you, if me sharing this helps you to make a different decision, I hope that you have a better path than I did. And I hope you have the quality of life that you could have sooner than I was able to, because you cannot live with them. They do grow. And with all the things that I tried, I could not stop that process. So if you are going to somebody and all they're doing is an ultrasound, or they're saying we're going to monitor them and they haven't done an MRI, they don't have a clear picture, check your insurance and see whether or not they would cover you going to a provider outside of the state. They might. And fight for your options. It is your body, and nobody's going to take